Welcome to Crafts and Minis. I love this hobby of miniature wargaming, of gaming in Dungeons and Dragons and using miniatures, of crafting terrain and all of the good stuff that goes along with this tabletop experience. And lately I've been thinking about how I organize my hobby time, or really the lack of organization. You see, I've been on a kick lately of only basing miniatures. Instead of any painting, instead of even some priming, I've been just going through this phase the last number of weeks of basing a ton of miniatures. And what it's left me with is a little bit daunting, I got to admit, to consider that if I'm going to get these projects going any further, I'm going to have to stop just doing one aspect of the hobby. But I got to tell you, I love basing miniatures. So some of these miniatures came with an integral base that was already part of the miniature, like HeroClix miniatures. And, you know, there are so many great channels on YouTube with our hobby that talk about how to take them off the HeroClix bases and how to adapt them. And I love Miniature Mashup and DM Scotty and Blandco and all the great content producers out there. Well, I love taking the integral bases off and mounting the miniatures on round bases for whatever the material of the miniature, metal, plastic, resin. I found that E6000 works awesome. But when you're getting E6000, get the clear kind. I've used the white kind before, and it's different. It just doesn't mount the miniature as well. It's a little more rubbery when it's finished drying, and I found that the miniature actually can pull off a little bit easier. So use the clear kind of E6000 if you're going for those mounting. But what I do is I take the integral base off with flush cutters, so it's flat on one side of the cutters. And I'm careful, you know, not to take off the feet of the miniature. At first, when you're going flat on the bottom with clippers, it's a little daunting, but it's totally worth it. And I've been mounting them on these counting chips that I talk about in my bases video. So lately, I've just been going nuts with basing. For the bigger monsters, I mostly use these MDF bases that I get on eBay. There are some incredible deals to get 40 millimeter, 50 millimeter, which that's your large size base in Dungeons and Dragons. That's about 2 inches. 75 millimeter, 3 inches. 100 millimeter, 4 inches. And it's been a blast, actually, just focusing on mounting a ton of figures. And I mount and do conversions at the same time, so you see some head swaps and weapon swaps and all that in here. But what I realized is that if I don't move on to another aspect of the hobby, I'm going to have a ton of figures mounted, which, of course, you can throw into your games of Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games unpainted or unfinished. But I am a hobbyist, and I love to get painted miniatures on the table. So this really got me thinking, you know, how do you organize your hobby time? Do you sit down with just a project in mind and see it from beginning to end, especially if you're doing miniatures, right, or a piece of terrain? Do you just do the whole thing from start to finish at once, or do you jump around a bunch? Or what provides your motivation? For me, I just love minis, and basing them is a ton of fun. Conversions are a ton of fun too. I love painting too, but I just have to be in the mood. And really, the thing that gets me in the mood is knowing my setup is ready to go. You know, obviously you can tell I embrace the clutter. And so my painting desk is cluttered. And if I don't get serious and just clean up once in a while, I lack the motivation to get going on that aspect of the hobby. So my challenge is, I guess, to you to really consider where you're at in the hobby right now, where's your motivation, and if you're happy just mounting miniatures over and over and over again, awesome. But if you want to take that next step, what's your motivation to do it? So thanks for tuning in. This YouTube channel has been a blast so far. I appreciate the likes, the subscribers, and hopefully in the future we're going to see how a bunch of these miniatures are used in different projects. I'm excited to share my thoughts on story design too for role-playing campaigns. And I like to let the minis be the guide. I like to take miniatures and allow them to tell me a little bit of a story, let them shape what we're going to do in the game. And I'm looking forward to sharing that idea with you in more detail as we go. So I hope you're having an awesome day. Thanks for tuning in, and go get after your hobby.